Ever feel like you're juggling two worlds at once, trying to honor your family's traditions while trying to find your own way in a totally different culture?
Yeah.
For a lot of second-generation Asian Americans, it's not just an everyday thing. It's really shaping how they see faith, too.
Yeah.
And we're talking about this trend they call the silent exodus, young people leaving Chinese heritage churches.
And it really is silent. You know, it's not about being angry or rebelling or anything like that.
Right.
The articles you shared in the research all point to a real struggle to connect with how faith is being expressed in those churches.
So it's more like they haven't lost their faith.
Mm-hmm.
They're just looking for a place where their whole identity, you know, both their Chinese heritage and their American upbringing can coexist.
Exactly. And it's even more than just feeling caught between those two cultures.
Okay.
Remember that first article we looked at? The one focusing on the struggles of second-generation Chinese Americans?
Yeah.
It highlights how this affects their worldviews,
Right.
like traditional values bumping up against the constant buzz of social media.
Yeah.
It's a real internal conflict.
Okay, so that makes sense on a personal level, but how does this worldview clash actually play out when we're talking about church? You'd think a sense of community would be comforting, right?
You think so? And that's part of what's so interesting here.
Yeah.
Article 2 points out that while these churches do offer community, they sometimes miss the mark on what this generation really connects with.
Okay.
Deeper questions about identity, fairness, truly belonging, those things aren't always addressed in traditional teachings.
So it's like, hey, I'm here, but do you really see me? Like all of me?
Yeah.
That's got to be incredibly isolating.
And you're right to pick up on that feeling of isolation, because this isn't just a Chinese American issue.
Right.
Article 3 talks about a really similar trend in Indian American churches.
Oh, wow.
Younger generations looking for a more multicultural expression of faith, pushing back against traditions they see as more about the old country than the one they're growing up in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
So we're seeing this real pattern. It's not about like giving up on faith completely.
Right.
It's more like a search for something deeper, right? Something that truly resonates.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what would make them feel truly at home in a church. Like, what are they looking for?
Well, that's where Ezra Son's research comes in.
Okay.
The one in Article 5. It gets really interesting because he talks about these three main factors driving this exodus.
Okay.
And I think you'll find they paint a pretty clear picture.
All right, lay it on me. What are these magic ingredients for a church that really speaks to this generation?
First up, standards of excellence.
Okay.
And before, you picture like a rock concert with stained glass.
That's right.
It's not about being flashy or anything.
Okay, good to know. Not that there's anything wrong with a little light show in church,
Right.
but it's not always about the bells and whistles.
Exactly. It's always talking about intentionality.
Okay.
A well-run service is sermons that actually speak to their lives, quality music, that feeling that things are done with care, you know,
Right.
not just going through the motions.
It's like if you're questioning everything else in your life, unless your faith experiences should feel real, you know?
Authentic,
So,
well thought out.
and that actually connects directly to the second factor, multiculturalism.
Okay.
This generation's grown up in a more diverse world than maybe any other generation before.
Right.
They want to see that reflected in their church communities.
Yeah. Instead of feeling like they have to leave a part of themselves at the door.
Exactly. Imagine if your church felt more like the real world, you know,
Yeah.
with all its complexities and differences all coming together.
Now that would be something special.
Yeah.
It's not about watering down anyone's individual culture, but creating a space where everyone feels welcome.
Right.
Okay, so that's two. What was that third factor again?
Right. The third one, this one might be the most telling. A non-legalistic culture.
Okay.
This generation is not about the rigid rules and dogma.
Yeah, they're looking for something real, right? Yeah, they're looking for grace, authenticity, open dialogue, where they can bring their whole selves to the table.
That's huge. We're talking doubts, questions, even anger, all the messy stuff that makes us human.
Yeah.
I mean, if you grow up feeling like you always have to be perfect, no wonder you'd look for a space that embraces the real you.
And you know what's interesting?
What's that?
This need for authenticity might actually be connected to that whole social media influence we were talking about earlier.
Oh, really?
Think about it, they're constantly bombarded with this curated perfection online.
Right.
So finding that authenticity offline, especially in their faith community, becomes even more important.
Wow, I didn't even make that connection. It's like all these threads we're talking about are starting to weave together. It's not just about leaving a church. It's this deep desire for something more. But is that asking too much? I mean, can churches really change to meet all these needs?
It's a tall order, but here's the thing. Leaving an ethnic church doesn't necessarily mean rejecting your heritage.
Okay.
Sonin found that a good amount of those who left would actually consider coming back.
Really?
If they saw these changes happening.
So it's not out with the old, it's how can we build something new while still honoring our roots?
Exactly. And that's where the real potential lies.
Yeah.
This isn't about impossible demands. It's about finding ways to bridge that gap between generations.
Right.
And create a faith experience that feels authentic to their heritage, but also relevant to their lives.
It's almost like they're holding the door open a little bit, hoping that someone will walk through it with them. Yeah. It's not about just abandoning the past.
Yeah.
It's about shaping a future where everyone feels seen.
Absolutely. And, looking at Articles 4, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
It's clear that some churches are getting that message. Mm-hmm. They're realizing this isn't just about being modern or trendy.
Right.
It's about survival.
Wow. That's powerful.
Right.
So what does that look like in action? Like, what are they actually doing to bridge this gap?
Well, one of the biggest shifts is intentional inclusivity.
Okay.
And we're not talking about just like surface level stuff here.
Right.
Some churches are bringing in non-Chinese leaders.
Wow.
Sending a strong message that everyone is welcome at the table.
It's like, this isn't just our space. It's your space too.
Right.
That takes guts and real commitment to do that.
It really does. And some churches are even going further, renaming their English services to be more inviting to people from different backgrounds.
Wow.
Some are even merging with other congregations to create these truly multi-ethnic spaces for worship.
That reminds me of something I read recently about churches becoming more intentional about reaching out to the community. It's like if you're only catering to one specific group, you're missing out on all the richness and diversity that makes a community thrive.
Right.
And that goes for faith communities too, don't you think?
Absolutely. And just like in any community, real connection requires more than just sharing a space.
Right.
It requires dialogue.
Yeah.
Article 6 talks about how important it is to create safe spaces for these open and honest conversations between generations.
Yeah.
Sharing experiences, struggles, hopes for the future of the church, all of it.
So it's about listening to really understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly. Because if you don't feel heard, why would you stick around for the conversation?
Right. Exactly.
And that leads us to what might be the most crucial element of all.
Okay.
Empowerment.
Okay.
It's not enough to just make space for the second generation.
Right.
They need to be empowered to actually shape the future of their faith. Mm-hmm. Article 7 really emphasizes that.
Giving them a real voice, not just an echo.
Exactly. Imagine if churches encouraged young people to lead, to innovate, to bring their own unique perspectives and passions to the table.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be about forcing change, but about creating an environment where it just happens naturally.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I mean, we've gone from this idea of a silent exodus to seeing churches taking these concrete steps to welcome people back in. It's almost like this silent invitation is being answered.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's something for all of us to consider, no matter our background or our beliefs.
Right.
How can we bridge those divides in our own lives?
Yeah.
How can we be a part of creating communities where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued?
It's a powerful question, and one I hope our listeners will keep exploring. Maybe it starts with a conversation or a willingness to listen, a commitment to step outside our comfort zones a little bit.
Right.
The future of faith of any community really depends on our willingness to build those bridges.
It really has.
And who knows, you might just find something unexpected along the way.
You never know.
If you want to go even deeper on this topic, don't forget to check out the show notes for links to all the articles and research we talked about today.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.